All right, Fungal Banner fans, we are so fired up for our next guest that we're bringing to you. We have the co-founders of Max BP, Neil McConnell and Brian Greene, on the call with us today. Thank you guys so much for coming on the Fungal Banner with us.
Thanks for having us. We're excited. Excited to be on. It's been probably a couple of years since I've been on a podcast, so go easy on me.
Absolutely. Well, we want to hear the story. When we teamed up with you guys to sponsor the podcast, and it was just such a cool. I remember being at a coach's clinic at Washington State University, and I saw this machine, and I was like, man, I want one of those, and how much they used at the time. But talk to us about how you guys came up with the idea and how you guys started the Max BP company.
So, Brian, you want to fire away or?
No, you go first.
Okay. It's interesting. There's a couple iterations. I actually went back to some old emails to figure out how far this went back. And so Brian and I probably met about 20 years ago playing men's league baseball in San Diego. And if any of you guys have played men's league baseball, it's a whole variety of everything from guys that played high school ball to we had a guy that was just a couple of years out of pitching in the big leagues for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And we were working. Soon after we met, Brian and I started, I got brought into a software startup, and Brian became my first employee there, and we were working way too much.
Yeah.
And so our performance was, not what we would have loved. Yeah. So, the guys that are throwing average high school speed, whatever, no problem. But anytime we were facing the better pitchers, me personally, I was disappointed that, I didn't have good at bats that, dreaming back 10 years or however many years before that I had. And so we were looking for tools. Brian actually had a machine that was one of these other small ball machines out there. And I had a 2-wheel, one of the big couple $1,000 machines from coaching high school ball, but I had nowhere to set it up. Couldn't even get on the high school fields where I'd volunteered for years to take batting practice. And so anyway, it was this challenge. What do we do with our limited time? And again, fast forward, the machines, the one that Brian had wasn't sufficient for what we wanted, wasn't as accurate. We started searching around and we found there was a guy in San Diego who'd come up with, he went out and built a better mousetrap. And so it was a machine that was faster, more accurate, held more balls, variety of issues that, again, we continue to iterate on, like the jamming of a pitching machine. That's a constant issue. In fact, if you talk to the big league guys, they're using that tennis ball machine. They're like, it's constantly jamming and there's issues. And that's a $14,000 machine that requires an operator. So anyway, we found this guy, chatted with him, helped him out with a bunch of baseball related things. Like it was missing the indicator light. There's a few other upgrades that we had suggested. And then as our software stuff, I think as we got lost, or what would you call it, Brian? Just lost in the corporate world.
There were some bad guys that got more power than they deserved.
So this is good versus evil story now. And I think if you go back through my history, I've been, from the time I fell in love with baseball, which, all of us might have like some little clues when we were 5 or 6 or 8 or, my first big league game in 81, I was in Oakland watching Ricky Henderson and tracked that guy daily from that point on. And then I was living in New York and he gets traded to New York and played high school ball and, again, go through all these iterations. But anyhow, I think everybody dreams of making a living or, spending some significant time daily or weekly around this sport that we fell in love with. So Brian and I talked to the guys that had come up with the machine, and they were good. They were good engineers at building stuff, but they definitely didn't know the sales and marketing side. No. And so Brian and I had background in building companies from scratch and multi-million-dollar companies from scratch. So it started by 2010. The old name of the product was called Sandlot Slugger. And that came out in about 2006. It had traded hands to another engineer that was mechanical that fixed some of the issues with the mechanical parts of the machine. And then in 2010, Brian came up with the name Max BP I think we were at our 50th software trade show on a drive to Vegas, and just we're like, what are we going to call this thing? And after the software company we had a big long name, so it was like whatever it was called Security Weaver. It was McConnell at securityweaver.com. I'm like, we need something short, like sick of typing out a 30 character something, and wanted something recognizable. Anyway, Brian came up on the drive at some point with Max BP, and which originally the idea was batting practice. Right. Soon after 2010, when we partnered with Ryan Harrison and Dr. Bill Harrison, if you guys are familiar with Dr. Bill, he was the vision guru for Major League Baseball going back to the early 70s with the Royals and George Brett, and just a who's who. If you've read a USA Today article or Sports Illustrated and they talk about ball spin and vision and any of that, he is typically cited for that. And then his son Ryan hopped into the business about 25 years ago and has since fully taken it over. But we quickly learned it was not just for taking batting practice and preparing us for men's league games. I have friends that played at the professional level, at the major league level. You know, we sent it to them. Hey, what do you guys think of this? Is this something that would help you? Ryan and his dad they had like endless vision drills where you're taking the bat out of the hand and breaking down pieces of the swing. And then defensively, you know, like today we've got an endless list of catchers. Jose Trevino, Yankees catcher, Gold Glove winner in 2002, been a customer of ours the last 4 years. So it's just the breadth of benefits that we found out of it was immeasurable.
Yeah. And, you know, I've always been a big fan of anything that lets you do something that's harder than what you're ultimately going to have to do. And so that was the most exciting part for me was, you know, there are obviously lots of benefits and we'll get into a bunch of them, but the best one was that the ball's smaller and you could use a smaller bat. And it's like, so you could challenge yourself to a level where you could be, you know, really, really having a hard time in your practice. And all of a sudden you feel like it's easy street when you actually step into the batter's box in a real game. And that, I mean, to this day, I pitch in the men's leagues and I like to throw from 70 feet first because a strike from 60 feet is easier than a strike from 70 feet. So if you can get used to throwing 70-foot strikes, everything just feels better and better as you move into the actual competition.
Yeah, I think one of our first hokey marketing images we came up with was this giant beach ball that we replaced for the guy hitting. And essentially, do you want that ball to look like this? And it really does. So it's anyhow, so the seeds were planted and we've had like kind of endless major league college stories from, you know, 2010 forward, Little League World Series winners. You know, in fact, the kid that hit the walk-off for El Segundo, Max BP user, a bunch of guys on that team. There's, again, just an endless list. One of the early MLB guys that hooked onto it, Raul Ibanez, who got one for his house in Seattle. He was about to get a tennis ball, that TENS machine, and he got introduced to our machine through Harrison. Next thing you know, he has 3 machines. He had one he was traveling with, one at his house, and one that he had at the stadium. And so that was probably the last 3 or 4 years of his career, Philly, New York, Anaheim, I think. But anyhow, so then so we planted these seeds but we were still doing software. So we had opened up a facility in San Diego. One of our other great ideas was I had many friends who had facilities and the facilities failed because they couldn't make rent. And so my thing was, how do we make more money off less square footage? And so either Brian or I can't remember, came up with it. Brian's a huge pizza fan, so he probably came up with this. But we took the cage and split it diagonally like a slice of pizza. We had the machine at the diagonal, and we only needed 40 feet. So we could take an 80-foot cage, split it in half, and then split those at the diagonal. And we had 4 machines running at the same time. And whether they were doing hand catch drills or receiving drills or actually full-on swings, again, you were increasing the productivity. Now, managing a facility and hiring folks while we were running a small software company proved to, you know, we were a few hours a week on this. We'd hired a guy, one of my all-time favorite coaches. He had guy named Greg Layson had played 4 years at Notre Dame, 90 to 94, was their leadoff batter. Played second base and did double plays with Craig Counsell for 2 years, Craig's last 2 years, and had played at a high level, had coached at a high level at facilities, had some, another guy that I can name 2 or 3 things I learned from this guy in terms of teaching hitting. But again, he was a great instructor. He was not somebody to run it on a day-to-day, and we were distracted. So I would say the business just kind of plugged along until I finally escaped the software world, which was a little over 5 years ago. So about 5 years ago, I'm sitting there with the accountant and we're going over the numbers and we're like, how the heck did we get here? So we had this incredible list of customers, these great success stories. And there was one success story 7 years ago, one of my favorites. It was a dad from Maine who wrote us this long letter and talked about his kid in 9th grade, swung and missed almost every single pitch. And then he said, between your machine and my kid's work ethic, the next year, he ended up leading the team in hitting and on base. He's quoting all these stats of, whatever. I can't even remember what the stats were. But so for me, that was incredible because here's a kid that was about to quit the game, ended up continuing his career, and ended up going and playing at, I think it was University of Maine, one of the top D3 programs in the Northeast. So to me, while I get super excited when we have some MLB superstar pick up our machine or we find out they're using it, to me, the career extenders, for me, are the ones that really resonate. Cause I was on a podcast years ago and I said, if I had a time machine, I'd travel back in time to the 80s and hand myself one of these machines. Brian and I have endless stories of what we tried to do I grew up in New York, not great weather, similar to you guys. Brian grew up in New Hampshire and Vermont.
Yep. Not
great weather, limited ability. And so as you're trying to scale as a ball player, get those extra reps, I had endless reps off of a tee. We had a few cages, back in the day. My dad wasn't like Piazza's dad that built him a, nice cage in the garage or basement, right? You guys know that story.
Oh yeah.
And then had Ted Williams over to his house to give him some feedback on his hitting. Have you seen that video?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, Google that video. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Piazza's just a kid and Ted Williams are, hey kid, you got something. Anyhow. So this solved like all those problems. You have a tool you can use indoors, limited space. There's just endless drills. And again, once connecting with the guys at the high level, like a lot of the guys at big league level are not taking swings off this. They're doing various hand catch drills. We were on MLB Network with Sean Casey about 6 years ago, demonstrating this. It's often called the Barry Bonds drill. You guys have seen Bonds used to set up the jugs machine and have a glove and, basically hands the ball and catch. With the younger kids, it's basically teaching them to wait on the ball. We talk about catching it belly button to back hip. So really tracking and then just straight up tracking. So if you're injured, you have a broken leg, a broken hand, obliques, whatever it is, you can set this machine up and get just endless reps and load that brain database. So it becomes a reaction as opposed to you sitting there at bat thinking.
Yep. Yeah, Neil, Brian, was there any point when you guys were doing the startup, just like, I don't know if we can continue on? I mean, you guys are burning the candle from both ends, with your day jobs, and you're trying to start up this company. I know it's extremely difficult, and then you've got family life too. You're trying to balance that all out. But was there at any point where you guys kind of just looked at each other and going, "What in the world are we doing?" Or is it just continue fight and fire, man, all the time?
I was talking about this with Neil earlier today. It's like the 3 or 4 things that we've all ended up doing all okay with. There has always been that point. And the only thing that kept us going in each case was just the sheer belief that there was a market for it. Like that we must not be doing something right yet, because this is too good of a product and it makes too big of a difference when people actually use it well. And so it became like a puzzle that you have to figure out, as opposed to like, well, maybe we were just banging our heads against the wrong wall. that never really entered our mind, because it's like we were getting better in the limited exposure we had to it, and we'd get those stories in. And so it's like, well, really, it's a marketing thing. And so often that turns out to be the case. People think that the key to having a great business is coming up with the great product. It's not usually the case. It's the execution of how do you get everybody who needs to know about it in the right way.
And we've also been, I mean, when we were doing software, we were selling the software that was the best of the best. So really it becomes more of a communication as opposed to being able to have those conversations and being able to communicate the tremendous value as opposed to just slinging whatever. So we've never slung commodities, so to say. The products that we've aligned ourselves, when we're in the software world, the engineers were always mad because they're like, it should sell itself. And like, well, it doesn't. So, on top of the fact that you're battling, depending on what level your business is at, you might be battling these billion-dollar companies, which we were in the software world, and certainly in this world too. There's everything from, if you go to if you guys have been to ABCA, there's just endless new products every single year, and a lot of those great products get buried because they started up like Max BP as this side project of something great, but to be able to have it turn into a real company, and it takes a lot to get over that hurdle.
Yeah.
When I can agree with what you said a little bit ago about you wish you had to have done this earlier. Man, I would have had this thing in the shop on the farm here in the wintertime, just losing golf balls left and right in the garage. Because I got to hit off of it here a little bit ago, and I'm like, man, this thing is awesome. Like the amount of the drills and success and the things that guys can work on with this machine, it made me really excited for this spring, because our kids at the high school level, we basically added ourselves another coach to run another station with this thing.
Yeah. When I was in high school in Vermont, half the practices before the season were in the gym. We would be lucky if we got to actually play on the field more than a week or two before the first game. And so I was trying to become the next Fred Lynn, and I'm like, I'm 7 miles away from the school. I don't have a driver's license. The nearest kid that could throw me batting practice was at least 3 or 4 miles away. I'm like, I want to be practicing every day, but I can't. That's back to what Neil was saying. It's like, if we had this thing from 8 years old, I can pretend like I would be on a much different trajectory coming out of high school than I was. I probably, we've had 16-game season. Like how many, and if you're at a regular practice and you're trying to get through all the guys with BP, how many cuts are you going to get? 20, 30? Like here, you could get 20 and 30 in 5 minutes. Like you could be doing it by yourself, indoors or outdoors, all year long. I mean, hundreds a day you could get.
Oh yeah, my son's 12 years old, and that's honestly his favorite machine. We have a cage down at my office, and that's the one. If I've gotten different machines and set up, and he's like, "No, Dad, let's do the Max BP," and he loves doing the turbo, curveballs on it, and the mix match, and different ranges of closeness and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he loves hitting with this thunderstick more than just his regular size bat. So you guys have done well on that. Good.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah.
I guess I'd ask, from a coach standpoint, which 3 of us are here, you guys have seen this used on, a bunch of different people you mentioned, some professional players and guys that I've talked about on air, off air. But maybe some of the applications that aren't as obvious, maybe some of the drill sets, some of the positional stuff, where apart from just, tracking a ball and hitting it, where have you seen this benefiting in the feedback you've gotten from some of those people, maybe some other applications or ways that it can be best used to help the players?
Yeah, I'll toss in one first, and that's with our pop-up attachment. And this goes down to kids that are as young as 4, 5, 6 years old learning to catch. Or I ran a high school softball program 5 years ago for 3 years, and 2/3 of the girls I got had never caught a pop fly. And so having a device where, in the past we would do tennis balls with a tennis racket or something, or just hand tossing wiffle balls and getting them to catch it on their forehead. But having them to be able to do something like just endless reps, they have fun with it. The kids will get there, and kids love to screw around, so they're sitting there and they're turning it and twisting it and all this. But then you can, once they've figured out how to catch pop-ups, now you can set up some cones and have them working left and right, going back, coming forward, and then the various footwork. So kind of that iteration of just learning to catch to the various footwork and stuff that's involved to getting the ball into the infield correctly, getting them to stop backing up on their heels, to turn, looking over a shoulder. And again, because it is the type of ball it is, there is that variability. So, and especially if it's a windy day, it's the candlestick. If you guys have ever been to candlestick,
Oh yeah,
candlestick effect. So anyway, so that to me is just, and it's transformational really, really quick. I mean, if I can name drop again, Jason Giambi used a similar small ball machine when he was growing up, and Harrison had done, tested their eyes, or his eyes when he was in high school, and it was his were top 3 of the eyes they'd ever tested. So he was somebody always vision, very into all this stuff. His father taught him through the Ted Williams system, but now he's this is going back about 3 years. He's coaching his kids' U8 team in Las Vegas. And he calls me up and Neil, I need one of these machines. The kids are, this, that, and the other. And he didn't even know about the pop-up attachment at the time. He calls me back 2 weeks after getting the machine. He's like, Neil, we missed every single pop-up in practice and games to we've caught everything like in 2 weeks. So the kids, so again, having a tool to get like an incredible number of reps, get them over that fear and confidence, get them positioning right. Because at that young level, the kids want to catch the ball over the side. And so how do you get them, through that? And, like most things in life, it's doing something many, 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 many times till you're comfortable and confident.
Yeah. You think of it as a drill that's a benefit to the pitcher when a player stands in the box when they're in the bullpen, just to get them used to having somebody in there. But I always like to be the guy who does that because you get to see that many more pitches coming right next to you. So I'm kind of more of a Max B purist. If I have a chance to actually swing a bat, that is the drill I'm going to do. Is I'm going to hit it. But if there's anything that I could possibly, anytime I'm restricted from actually hitting, I like the one where you're just using your backhand. I'm left-handed, so like you're catching it in your backhand, and first, even if you're tracking it all the way in, it'll bounce off your palm a bunch of times. So you have to actually get even more refined to be able to catch it rather than just have it hit your hand. And then one that I do just for competition's sake, sometimes by myself, sometimes with other people, is if I am hitting, I'll give myself a third of a point for every ground ball, because you figure 1 out of 3 might be able to go through, and then a full point for line drives and nothing for pop-ups, and then do maybe 20 or 30 pitches and see what kind of a score you can get. You could do that with somebody else. You could even bet on it potentially. And if you're on your own, you could just kind of set a number and see if you can beat it the next day. So that's not so much a drill per se as it is a way of thinking about how to just constantly use it to measure what bar are you up to yet.
And then adding on to that, the hand catch is with the light working on the load. So majority of high school teams I've worked with, if I go to a game before I work with them, I'll notice 2, 3, 5, 6 guys that are not loaded up pre-release. And I'm an early load guy. I know some guys like to bounce, but I'm an early load. And so getting them in that habit of understanding, like if they're even going to have a chance to hit this guy, step one is being loaded before the pitcher releases the ball. Mm-hmm. So again, something that they can just get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reps. A visual thing, that Tony Gwynn taught. He wanted the batters focused on something that was consistent every single time. And so if you guys have heard this, he told guys to focus on the pitcher's ball cap. Every pitcher's wearing a ball cap. The release is typically right here. And you could adjust that. If it's some sidewinder, you can focus on his hip or something else. But the idea is to have that consistent approach, so you're in the box confident, but also preparing your eyes so that your eyes have a plan with each at bat. So with this machine, one thing, the early machines had various stickers on the front, and we took all those stickers off the front because we wanted just that plain front that they're focused on. And then they've got the light that's the trigger for loading, and then the swing.
Yeah. So guys, how do you guys go about, I mean, I've just seen your machines improve over the years. You guys have come out with some different new inventive, you got the discs that are fabulous. I love those things. My guys like to really work on those, but how does it, you guys conversate with other, coaches out there? Do you guys just watch a lot of, games and you're seeing things and Neil and Brian, you guys kind of converse, I'm assuming all the time, you're business partners in this, but you're just like, okay, what's the next best thing we want to get out in front of, the public eye and help improve this game?
Yeah, I think, my thing is I'm really adamant on very, very high quality. So in fact, something we were supposed to announce a couple weeks ago, it's coming in a few weeks, but the machine now has a lifetime warranty. The bats that we sell the metal bats have a lifetime warranty. The balls have a lifetime warranty. And we've done this because we've collected an incredible amount of data over the last year and a half, and we know the reliability. So I want a short list of products that I would put in my bag as a coach. I do not want to sell junk, so to say. And I also don't want to sell the product that lasts a month or a season. So that's criteria number one. We do listen to the customers heavily. So for example, the original machine, the only way you could get it was with the battery inside. There were some issues with that, some support issues. While the original machine was designed by an engineer that loves taking things apart and putting them back together, 95% of our customers, replacing a battery was not top of their list of things to do for the day, or the various steps that they might miss as they're putting it back together, especially since the battery was the last thing in there. So probably 8 years or so ago, we did some survey, and we also found out that 3/4 of the usage was indoors. So we're like, well, it doesn't need a battery if it's indoors. So we pulled the battery out, we put it into a battery pack, we have the AC plug. So it is modular because people were using it both ways. But this way indoors, you have that consistent power, and you're not worried about, while the battery does last upwards of 8 hours, it's very durable. Under proper care, it should last 5, 6, 7 years. It's lead acid battery, same that you would have in your car. But same thing, you go park your car for 6 months, guess what? There's a chance your battery's toast. So, and if you put it away, we found our customers they would use it and then they would put it away and then they'd come back 6 months later. And if you put away this type of battery, discharged or low charge, guarantees it's going to be toast. So that was something we did, listening to the customers, watching, looking at the support data, and then figuring out how to iterate on the product to make it a better experience all around.
And Neil's told me about lots of people, as he's, we got more exposure. A lot of companies come to him and want to talk about combining or whatever. And, what they always say to writers is write what you know. I don't think we have any products that we wouldn't have tested or tried or played with and felt like, yeah, I would either I'm going to use this as a 50 something, or I definitely would have used it if I was a teenager or a 20 something. So, I think you can't go too far wrong if you're representing products that you like and use yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And heavy bat's a perfect example of that. So, I go back to when I was in high school. My dad bought me a clunker bat that we were just using for BP. I ended up sawing the end off it, filled it with cement. It weighed 64 ounces. We'd take it to the cage and hit with it. I still have it to this day. But, and since then, all the science is out on light, heavy, handle weighted versus end weighted. Especially kids that don't have the million swings like a pro. A pro can swing an end weighted bat in the batting and doesn't impact. He's got his millions of swings. A 10-year-old that's swinging with a donut on the end has much greater impact on how that current at bat and various flaws that can build into their swing. So heavy bat, we had partnered with them on some shows. I had actually used their products, had donated some of their gear over the years to programs I supported. And, one thing led to another where we acquired them towards the end of 2020. And so again, if you believe in light heavy game sequence, we believe it's the best option.
That's cool. Now, is that kind of the same thing with Frost Gear as well? I mean, you guys were kind of dabbling with, or was that
yeah, Frost Gear was a little different. Frost Gear came about more through a marketing. So we were trying to do better video for our ads and communicate our message. And so we got referred to these guys that started Frost Gear, and they started another company called Strategy Red Sports. So they were doing, now fast forward however many years, and they're doing video from startups through Major League Baseball. They had started this company when they were in college. I think they were 18, 19 at the time. They're in the Northeast, and they just wanted to throw more in cold weather and get reps. And for me, it hit home because it's the old long toss. Like, again, if you believe in long toss for building arm strength, what's your program? Are you doing it the 3 months in season? Are you doing it year round? If you're doing it year round, where do you have enough room to do a proper long toss? And so as you get up to, say, the high school level, where it's become more important in building arm strength, you need like an airplane hangar if you're somewhere with bad weather. So a high school gymnasium is not going to facilitate long toss. So I thought, again, that was a really unique product. They then came out with the cold weather batting gloves. Again, same thing. They want more reps. They're outdoors. And then they came up with these base layers, which the base layers has been the big hit in the last couple of years since I've run the company, which we have Wake Forest, the #1 team in the country, with our base layers. It's really cool seeing, actually my sales guy that did that deal just sent me a picture yesterday, them on the field with, our base layers under their shirts and cool. And a variety of these others. And so it's again, the very, very high quality product and functional. So, all of our products, there's a underlying theme of it allows you to get more reps and more productivity with that time you're going to invest in getting better at this sport.
No, I saw that here last weekend at our coaches clinic. Ryan had some of the Wake Forest kind of Frost Gear, and that's pretty cool. I mean, to be able to have that opportunity to work that relationship with some of those Division I schools, and hopefully, you start to see. I mean, I told Ryan, I was like, man, I'd love to do that at Tri-City Prep, but I think we'll have to wait a little bit before we jump on board like that. But
Yep.
Is there anything particularly new that you guys are working on, and that with maybe the machines itself, or anything that it's kind of in the works that you guys would like to share about?
Probably the most #1 requested item, and this has actually come up in conversations with Dick's over the last 9 months. Dick's has wanted our machines in their stores, and we're still working on how that would look best. In retail, they always say you get one shot and then you're on the discount shelf. So we want to make sure it's a home run out the gate. Helps a little. The really cool story. The lead guy that sells Diamond for them got one of our machines. He wanted to test it out with his kid. His kid, I think, is 11 last year when he got it. And going into one of the calls before we even started, he said, "Hey, I got to tell you the story. My son's never hit a home run over a fence. He's a good hitter, but he's a smaller guy, hasn't had the power, hasn't this." So going into this call, he's had 4 consecutive bombs over a fence. And I'm like, the baseball gods didn't tee this call up any better. Couldn't have teed this up any better. It was incredible. Wow. So anyway, but the thing that's come up with Dick's has been the netting. So, and we have a lot of customers requesting, do you guys sell nets? Do you sell, because if they're hitting in a backyard. And so, I always remind them, if you think you're limited because you're hitting in a backyard and you're putting all the balls in the neighbor's yard, do the hand catch drills, do the track and tap drills, do receiving drills. There's a lot of work you can get in, so don't think you're constrained. We had a guy recently post a video in Michigan, and he was talking about, hey, he's been waiting for the weather to be good so he can go outside and use it. I'm like, hey, again, indoors, hand catch drills, track and tap, all these other drills that really break down components of the swing that are going to load your brain. So nets is the number one thing. We just moved to a new facility right by the airport in Portland. First move in 8.5 years. And so part of that move was enabling us to increase stock in some new products.
At your guys' new location in Portland, will you guys have the availability for particular buyers to come in and maybe try a machine or, try a heavy swing bat, or any of that kind of stuff at all?
We don't have that set up, but we've got one of my partners from the past few years, former Nike guy, has been trying to talk me into running a tent sale where there would be on-site demos. One of my big objectives, again, like working with you guys, working with the Pickles over the last couple of years, is really supporting these local organizations. We're locked in on Portland. We're coming up on about 9 years now in Portland. And so, just owning the home turf, so to say, of the Pacific Northwest.
It's a good place to own.
Yeah,
no doubt. So
yep, for sure.
That's cool. So I kind of think about this whole process, and you guys had some, background a little bit, both of you guys playing baseball. We talked and on the high school level a lot. I look at the game of baseball as life. And so to our listeners, what could you guys tell them today that, how much of you guys being foundationally strong in the game of baseball has helped path in the success of starting this company and continuing the growth of that?
That's a good one.
Didn't mean to catch you guys.
I'll go first because I have my standard. I've run the local Little League the last 8 years, and I think I've evolved in terms of how I view baseball. My first 20 or 30 years, I viewed baseball as like I just love taking batting practice and hitting and games and all that, and that was it. But the thing I've really learned is that baseball is this unique individual and team sport combination. My kids have mostly played individual sports, so I've seen how that is radically different. But when you're up to bat, it's you. When you're pitching, it's you. When you're making that play, it's you. And I say the most tremendous value that baseball teaches is this instant recovery. When you make an error in the field, that is gone. There's now a new play. When you're up at bat and the umpire makes a bad call, you don't swing at that meatball you should have crushed. You foul one off that you should, whatever it is, you have like anywhere from like milliseconds to a few seconds to regroup and get back to that level set. And so how does that apply in life? From running a business, there's anything crazy stuff that comes up. Sometimes we have hours or days to deal with, but I always translate to the kids as like drivers on the road. So when they're driving on the road and somebody cuts them off or something stupid happens, they have milliseconds to regain their composure and, operate properly. And not a lot of sports teach that. So to me, that is the biggest life lesson that comes out of baseball is something bad happened and then getting back to your baseline so you can perform on whatever the next thing is. And the quicker you can do that, the better you're going to handle so many things in life.
Jason, I want to ask, is that one of your standard go-to questions? Because it should be if it isn't.
It really, honestly, Brian, it really is, because, the game is going to end at some point in life. Right. And right. I always tell our guys, Kelly, of course, he probably gets tons of letters and calls of kids who want to play at the next level. But ultimately, how many of those guys are really ready for the next level is a very small percentage. So being realistic is tough, but the thing is that once the game ends, what is it you're going to do? And how are you going to hit life strides? I mean, I think about my family, and I have 3 little ones, and things come up. Things don't always work the way you want to work. Last spring, my son broke his arm kind of on a weird, unexpected type situation. And so he got a cast. We were playing along the season fine. One day he's at his game getting ready to play. And basically the official comes over and says, he can't play in this game because he's got a cast. We looked at it as a weapon. And I'm like, excuse me, a weapon? I mean, it's a cast, for crying out loud. Well, he could club a kid and concuss a kid, and then we got lawsuits and all that stuff. So he can't sit, or he can't play. He can sit in the dugout, cheer on his team, but he's done. And so, of course, he sits in that dugout, totally holds his composure. I mean, most kids reactive would be in tears because he can't play the game. He sat on that bucket. He cheered on his team. He was loud. But we get after the game, he gets in the pickup, and the first thing, his eyes are on. And I said, Jackson, I said, hey, you know what? We're not going to allow this to differ the direction of your season. We're she's like, no, the umpire said I can't play. I said, no, Jackson, we're going to come up with a solution here. So I get home and I'm thinking, what can I do? What can I do? How can I get my son back? And I'm looking up the rule. And of course it says, yeah, because of cast, whatever. So I started thinking about, oh, you know what? When we go to grandma and grandpa's, they have these pool noodles, you know? And so I'm thinking, well, those are got a hollow center. So what I could do, I know a store down in town has them for a couple bucks. I'm going to buy a pool noodle. I'm going to cut it in half and split it in fours. And then I'll take Gorilla Tape and I'll tape on the outside. And so it'll be a padding type. It'll look like a big, bulky, arm there. But the thing is that they can't complain. And if they do, they're going to talk about these kids who wear evil shields. I'm going to say, well, that's a weapon too, because that's a Kevlar protection, right? So if a kid has it on his elbow and he's running down and kid sticks out at whatever and he clobbers a kid in the face, that could be a weapon too. So I tell my wife and she's like, okay, she's all for it. We ended up doing it, cutting it. And Jackson was like, all right, whatever it takes, Dad. And we ended up playing the remainder of that spring season with that on until he got it off like the last week of the season. But my point is that, you know what? That's life. Some things happen. It was a freak accident. He even broke his arm. It shouldn't even happen, but it did happen. But are we going to allow that to dictate our direction of our life because of some mishap or speed bump? Not at all. And that's why I tell my high school kids all the time, you may be completely healthy, and next thing maybe a family member is diagnosed with cancer unexpectedly. Things happen in life. How are you going to handle it and how are you going to move forward? So yeah, it is pretty much my kind of, one of those things I ask my guys every season. So.
All right. So I have an answer now. Actually, I maybe even have two. So the first one is that I was saying I wanted to be Fred Lynn growing up in Vermont, watching the Red Sox back in the 70s and 80s. And I was somebody who recognized pretty early that it wasn't going to work out, that I was going to make it all the way to majors, because even my junior and senior year, I was hitting like 350. And this was, nobody was even throwing over 83 or something like that. So I'm like, I think you're supposed to be hitting better than this by senior year if you're going to make the majors. So I kind of came to that realization early, but I'm still pitching in, I go to the Phoenix World Series every year in the 50 and over team. And I've been pitching since I was 30, the first time that I moved into a city that was big enough to have those adult leagues. So 28 years now, it's been a really big part of my life still. So that's one piece, is that just because you weren't going to go all the way to the top, there's a level that you can get off the elevator and it's the right level for you. But the other thing I was thinking is, and this is kind of like a compare and contrast to the way our education system works, where I never really thought about this till, maybe 10, 15 years ago, that you get a report card with all these really disparate courses, right? You got history, you got geography, you got math, and the unspoken message is that you should be good at all of these. You shouldn't fall down in any of them. And in fact, that if any of them are a C where the other ones are A's, you should work on that one exclusively to bring it up. And I kind of feel like that's a little bit backwards. I actually think that we should be leaning into our strengths and figuring out what we should leave to the other guys. And baseball is a pretty good place to learn that, where it's like, there are utility infielders, but they're in the minority. Really, you want to be the best pitcher or the best first baseman or the best center fielder, and let your teammates handle the things that if you're not good at ground balls, don't try to make yourself into an infielder. Be an outfielder or be a great DH. It doesn't, find a slot and then just hammer that until you get to the height of that one specialized part, instead of feeling like you're a failure if you can't do every single thing under the sun well.
That's good.
That's awesome. Well, as we start to wrap this thing up a little bit, I got one more question for you guys, and going through everything that you guys offer, and in the world of baseball we live in now, where money can be a problem and things are so expensive. Just and in most of the world nowadays, things are just too expensive. The fact that you guys offer a machine and baseball training tools that are cost effective, that anybody can use, mom can go out with son or daughter in the back and help their kid get better at baseball, where maybe they can't afford to go to the big facility or they can't afford all the, the expensive things. What is it that you want the customers and our listeners, when they think of Max BP and your guys' company, what is it that you want them to know about your company?
Want to go first, Neil?
Sure. I think more than anything, just the quality and the support. If you read through our reviews, they're sincere. They're everything from the success to the, when things happen, we're still bummed when bad things happen. I swear every Christmas I'm checking emails on Christmas Day, and you have some parents that haven't opened up the box until Christmas Day, and maybe there's an issue with that, or we've done everything we can tied to UPS and FedEx to figure out how to ship these things with the least amount of damage. We even evolved the plastic that the bucket's made out of. About 6 years ago, we went to a plastic that, they used to chip and break, especially in cold weather. And the guy demonstrating it to me spiked it on the ground like a football. He's like, Neil, is this good? Yeah, that works. So I really want them to know, like, we truly just insanely care about customer support and taking care of our customers. I say we're the combination of Nordstrom and Costco, minus we don't let you return the Christmas tree in January. So so no leasing a machine for a season and then telling me, hey, I bought it in February and returning it in June, and like, hey, it didn't work for us, or and communicate with us too, because if somebody they're, hey, the machine's wobbly, it's not this. Well, it's not supposed to be that way. So reach out to us. We have some great online videos. We have all of my salespeople now have played college baseball. In fact, the one I just hired won a national championship with Coastal Carolina. He was their center fielder as a sophomore. Wow. He used our machine that year at Coastal Carolina. He used our heavy bats that year. He went and played in the Mariners organization for 4 years and retired. So anyway, all of us, we just insanely care about this game, and we care about them getting the most out of these products. And so the machines have near zero return rate, which is just unheard of in consumer products. So anyhow, give it a try. And unless you're one of those people that insist you have to hit baseballs to get better at baseball, this is definitely a tool that will just the amount of time, the amount of growth in the short period of time is just incredible. And for myself, that again, I'll go back to, I play in a tournament maybe once a year or a game a year, and I'll go and I'll just do that hand catch. And to me, it's like, how, to be able to feel like I can go have a good at bat once a year, which my goal is always make sure I have one at bat a year. And it's anyhow.
That's good.
I would focus on like the versatility. I really, if we hadn't been using it before we ever bought the company, it would sound self-serving, where we're just saying like, buy this above every other tool. But it is the only tool that I would have if I could only have one. I'd rather use $20 spikes and a $20 glove and a $20 bat and have a Max BP than have $200 versions of all those things and not have a Max BP. Like, it just cuts out so many of the hassle factors that both I remember as a kid, and that some of which persist. And we've talked about almost all of them, right? Everything from the weather, the space that you need, the safety. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've hit within 150 feet of a car and I've never hurt a car, right? Like I've hit line drives off of cars before, but no permanent damage, right? And then the sheer number of reps, and then the fact that you can do stuff all by yourself, even if you don't have a sibling or a friend or a parent to help you. I mean, there's just so many things that it eliminates as issues that would keep you from being able to progress the way you want to, so that it becomes your buddy that you can just ride with for as far as it'll take you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, no, we truly, and I now that you said that, I'm gonna have to break this thing out in the fall before our alumni game at Central Washington. Make sure I get ready for that a little bit, because I usually only hit off the red shirts. I won't hit off their best guy. So, anyways, thank you guys.
Brian got in an alumni game at Brian played college tennis, but he got in an alumni baseball game about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was the 20th. 20th reunion. So 88, 2008. Yeah. So I was 40 something, and it's a small school in St. Petersburg that only has 1,200 kids. But basically that was alumni from the baseball team over the last 10, 15 years or whatever, and playing against the current team. And so I got to pitch like the 7th inning, and I got a 1-2-3 inning.
Heck yeah.
That was
Division 2, right? Division 2.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Eckerd College in Florida, where Steve Balboni.
Yeah.
You guys know that name? To date ourselves, I mean, Brian's I'll say almost 60, but a hair over 50. And I'm 51, so you guys all look a little younger than us.
Well, I'm 43, Neil. So
Okay,
I'm the oldest of the
43.
bunch here. Yeah, Kelly is
Okay.
a little bit younger than me. So
Yeah.
I'm the old
I'll
vet.
say it is insane the years that fly by. It's like I've been going to ABCA now for I think I first went as a coach probably 25 years ago. Saw Lasorda speak, saw Skip Bertman speak. He was unbelievable, talking about building his program at LSU from having like no lights and dirt field and whatever to, powerhouse. And but I remember just walking around, and that was when I still hadn't converted myself to like coach. And if I saw a pitch, I just wanted to go hit. And so I'm walking around the booth, and all I want to do is hit. And now I'm afraid of guys asking me to get in there. I'm like, I'm going to blow out my back or that sadness of like, you remember the past self and I need to go grab somebody that saw me play 20 years ago to reassure somebody this guy had an arm or whatever. Anyhow, but props to you guys too for coaching, man. I've been a volunteer at a lot of high schools. I've coached Little League. I've worked with big league guys. I've head coached softball for the first time 5 years ago for 3 years. And anyhow, but props to you guys. It's incredible profession. And I often wonder if my goal, similar to Brian's, I think we were similar in this way. We always picked where we wanted to live first. So that pretty much eliminated me from coaching college ball. All my buddies that have coached college ball, it's like the endless address change in the, where do you live now? And
right.
I can barely keep up. So anyway, but it's incredible what you guys do to, develop kids and pass along all these lessons of baseball. And anyhow.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Great questions too.
Hey, we appreciate you guys then, and we really appreciate the partnership and knowing the fact that when you partner with somebody, you want to make sure it's the high quality product, and that's for sure what you guys offer. And I can't honestly, we start our high school season here in a week on the 26th, and I can't wait. That thing's never going to shut off. I just know for a fact it will be going every single day of practice.
We'll have to get you another too. The one of the other cool things that happened when I ran the softball team was that it was the first time I'd run a team since I had run the company. And I'd always talked about having 2 to 5 of these machines going. And again, I mentioned before where I live, like we get hundreds of inches of snow, and a lot of years we don't even have a home game. But I had inside the gymnasium, I had the center high school gymnasium, the center thing dropped. I had 3 stations of max BPs on one side. The other side, we had a net dropped with the Jugs light flight machine. And then we had 2 other max BP stations going. So I had 5 machines running. The number of reps those kids got were more than anything of any program I'd ever been around ever. And then when we were outside, we'd have 2 stations going. So we'd have a hand catch before they were hitting, and we'd always have a pop fly station. And again, wherever your program's at, there's always an ability to, how you're going to best use those. But
Absolutely.
Anyhow.
Yeah, because that's the thing about the Pacific Northwest, right? Kelly deals with rain all the time. We have wind and snow here, and trying to be the Northwest coaches are the most efficient indoor coaches they can be, because we've got to be in the majority of the first half of our season.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again, and we appreciate everything. And thank you for taking an hour out of your weekend to come talk to us about Max BP. We truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it. Have a great season, guys.
Yeah, you
Thank
too.
you.
We
Thank
appreciate that.
Take care.
Kelly, Jason, I'll be right back to wrap this thing up.
Now entering from the bullpen.
Well, that was a lot of fun getting to see the history of Max BP, and thanks again to Neil and Brian, the co-founders of Max BP, for taking an hour of their day to come on and talk about their products. And I know that we're so fired up to be partnered up with them, and then for them to sponsor and advertise with the podcast is just, it's cool. And like I said there at the end, to be a part of a good quality company that cares about the product, and it's not just spitting things out that we use for a day and then throws away. No, this is something that we can all use for a very long time. And make sure you go check it out. Go to maxbb.com. You can type in P&W Banter for 10% off when you do go and order everything. And they talked about all the drills that you're going to be able to do and like the outfield attachment. That didn't even dawn on me about the outfield attachment when that thing showed up, and we put it on there. It was in the gym one day, and white, golf size wiffle balls shooting fly balls in a white roof gym. I think that's going to be just one more concentration and visual training for our guys that I'm excited for that. We even shot ground balls with it throughout the day, and they turned it up to max. They turned up to curveball and made me look like an idiot. I couldn't hit the dang thing because it was so wicked. It was awesome. And no, I just, it's going to be awesome that we have this partnership, and hopefully for a very long time, and something that's going to improve our program and everybody else's program that has these things. And even if you're just a parent listening, it's something that I wish I would have had in my backyard. My dad might not have had a shoulder surgery for all the BP pitches he threw. If we would have had this as a kid, I probably would have hit off it all the time. So thank you again to those guys, and just fired up that we are a part of this company and having them on our podcast.
Yeah, Eric, I think also to add to that, just their Frost Gear swag, the special team branding that they're doing on that now, and the new and kind of improving technology that they've got. I think you're spot on. They're a fabulous company. I mean, all their gear, is phenomenal. If you haven't tried out their new Frost Gear gloves and thermals and all that, I really encourage you to get online and order that, especially here in the PNW. And we're a week away from start, and at least on the high school side, and college is already, Kelly, you were down in Eastern Oregon down there, and some warm weather, but where that Frost Gear really applies. So I'm looking forward to using it when we play old Kittitas this year. And you got those 60-mile-an-hour winds coming off those white caps up on the old mountains. So
yeah, I think it's great to have on and be working with a group that's Northwest based, and even more so here soon, and have that mindset of what our constraints are here locally, and the things that we deal with, they understand, and so whether it's the machine or the gear to help out, it's all relevant and tools to put in our toolbox when financially you can make it work to be able to have those type of things. But yeah, we've loved the heavy bat end of things. It's been a big part of our training. It's been in a cage, the handle loaded side of things, and you mentioned that and the benefits of that. So guys have really learned how their swings properly work with a constraint, right? Anytime you're using a constraint, it brings out some flaws, and it's a tool to work on, right? And I don't think anything is the end all be all, and those guys were the first to admit it. You mentioned some other machines in there, but having something that brings out some flaws in guys or puts a constraint on them that makes it a challenge type drill and station is great. And then the heavy swing bat, the on deck bat, has been great too. They got one that's a little bit more end loaded than the other, so some guys like a different variety when they're on deck swinging, and some of that feel good before you go to home plate without having watching guys trying to get the donut off their bat a couple times can be a challenge. So having a standalone tool that you're not stressed about trying to get a weight off your bat before you're at bat is a good thing to have. So check them out. Feel free to reach out to us to ask any questions on those things. And or baseball coaches using tools from people. So love to look forward to continue using them.
Absolutely. And like I said just a little bit ago, go to maxpp.com or Frost Gear or Heavy Swing, and at checkout type in PNW Banter for 10% off. Anything purchases over $500, you get a $50 gift on that purchase as well. So thank you also to Safeguard out of the Tri-Cities. I know that if you're on our YouTube channel, the new hat Jason's got on was a hot commodity back in Ellensburg at the clinic at Central Washington University for the Washington State Baseball Coaches Association, and some of the pins and koozies we handed out. And thank you to Devo Bats. Go to devobats.com for a family-owned bat company. Go get your fungos ordered, get your bats ordered, trophy bats, whatever you need. They can help out. So we only got a couple more episodes left. I know we start next week, and all the colleges are fired up and going all the way. So we are about there, guys. And so we'll wrap it up with just maybe an episode or two left before we get into our season. Until next time, thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.